Hi everyone, I'm Heather Poduska and welcome to Thrive, the show where I bring you tips, resources, and people to help you create a more abundant life and business. You're in for high-value content coming to you from industry leaders who are growing their business, making an impact, and rocking their brands. And today I'm so excited to have my special guest here. Not only is she an amazing professional, she's also a good friend of mine, Kathy Vines. Kathy Vines is a certified professional organizer and productivity specialist and the owner of Clever Girl Organizing, based in Melrose, Massachusetts. Kathy works with her clients in person and virtually to help them untangle their relationship with their stuff and to create a plan for living more simply and more organized every day. She's a speaker for corporate and community audiences on reclaiming productivity and organization. And she's the author of a new book, Clever Girl's Guide to Living with Less. Kathy, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited.
I'm excited too. We were just talking backstage. We've known each other a little while now.
Yes, almost 20 years.
Shh.
Almost 20 months.
But it's been so exciting
Yeah.
to watch your evolution as an entrepreneur because you haven't always been a professional organizer.
No, I haven't.
So how did that happen?
I started my business about 4.5 years ago after I had been in human resources for 20 years, a perfectly fine corporate experience and career, what I thought I'd always be when I'd grow up. And I found myself on the other end of a job elimination and got the opportunity to look at my future and say, do I have a 21st year of this in me? And I think it was really a call for me to say, am I doing the work I love the most for the people who benefit from the most, where I can impact and really make a difference in the most people's lives? And I knew that was a different path for me at this point in time in my life. And I'd been coaching in my career and been doing a lot of one-on-one work, and that's really where I found my joy. But professional organizing had always been this like someday maybe career for me. It's something that I always had a natural ability for, maybe not keeping myself organized, but helping other people get organized. And I found myself in my early 40s staring down what comes next and said, I always said this was someday, maybe now is someday. I launched my career with the idea of saying, let's see what the first 6 months look like, and then let's see what the first year looks like. I can always go back if it didn't work out. And at this point in time, I can't imagine doing anything other than what I'm doing now.
Yeah, I really love that story too because you took where you were in the moment and it wasn't necessarily something that you had done before, but you had talent in that area, you had expertise, you had a longing to do something like that, and you looked at the landscape where you were right then as opposed to like a lot of people go back, what did I want to do when I was 20?
Right.
Let's rehash that dream.
Right, exactly.
And you took it and said, where am I right now?
Yes. And I was able to do enough analysis with my husband and our finances and what would it really mean to be a business owner? You know, it's one thing to say, I'm good at being organized, I'm good at helping other people be organized. It's a totally different thing to say, and I can start a business, and I can own a business, and I can grow a business around that talent. So we were able to really take a look at what would it take, what would it mean for us, what would it mean to our time together, what would it mean to our finances, all of that, and say, this is the right plan for us right now. And it was a good fit for really what was making me happy in that moment.
Yeah, and I'm a really big proponent of that, of following the happy meter.
Yeah.
I mean, your desires are always leading you somewhere, and if you pay attention to that, you don't always know what the end result is going to be.
And as testament to that, if you had told me 4 years ago I was going to write a book, I would have told you you were crazy. Like, writing a book was not part of my plan when I started my business. And the one thing I know about that for sure is I have no idea what 4 years from now is going to look like.
Well, I can say that if I had known you were going to start a business, there is no doubt in my mind that you would be writing a book.
Well, thank you.
No doubt, no doubt, because you're so talented, so talented. So let's talk a little bit about the book.
Great.
Living with Less. Like, so for some people, that title, they're like, well, I don't want to live with less. I want more. Like, it's more is better, more is better. So what is the book about, and what is the benefit of living with less?
Sure. You know, I love that you point out kind of living with less is, it's 3 small words, but there's a big meaning in that. And living with less might be less stuff, but I think I set up in the book that this is really also around less clutter, less chaos, less stress, less negative impact on family relationships, Maybe less trouble with work if you're really challenging with clutter in the workplace. Sometimes living with less is a good thing, depending on what you're trying to weed out of the distractions and the things that are getting in your way of happiness, of success, of really feeling confident and happy in your space. I think that's one of the things when I have worked with people, and so much of this book has come out of working with people over the last 4 years and beyond, that I hate seeing people who aren't happy in their homes. Your home should be the place where you escape from the work and you come home, and it should be happy, and you should feel confident, and you should feel competent, and you should feel like it is not yet another place you want to escape from. And that's really where I found for a lot of people the idea of clutter, the idea of holding on to things that are getting in your way, of finding the things that you do need, really needed a different kind of spotlight for people. I tend to work with people who are like very common. They tend to be people who say, I don't know where to start, I'm overwhelmed, I got started but I can't finish, or I finished but I can't keep it up, I struggle with decision making. All of that was the psychology and the emotion getting behind people's relationship with the stuff that's in their home. So when I really set up to write the book, it was about helping people live with less when their goal is, I want to be free of how the things in my home make me feel weighed down. Sometimes it's really a simple equation, right? I'm downsizing, I'm moving in a year, I'm going from this 4-bedroom house that I've raised my family in, and now I'm moving to a 2-bedroom tiny condo somewhere. All right, I got to cut the stuff in half. So sometimes it's really practical, right? There's a goal, there's a deadline, there's an end vision. Sometimes you're not going anywhere. It's just life is too hectic, and you look around and you say, I'm feeling kind of swallowed in and buried with the things in my home. There's the room with the door I close and never open. Certainly not when company's around, but maybe not even for myself. So this book was about helping people get in touch with the psychology, the psychological and emotional barriers that get in their way when they say, I want to pursue that, but I just can't seem to make progress against it.
Yeah, and the thing I love about your book is that you divided it into, the first section is about the psychology of it, and then the second section is about the practicality of actually dealing with this stuff.
Yes.
But I really liked, I liked both sections, but I really liked the first section because, it does cause a lot of anxiety when you cannot let go of something, or you want to let go of something, but you don't know how to let go of it, where to put it. How to organize it. And I know for me, a lot of it is just, I don't have the time.
Sure.
I don't have the time. If I had all the time in the world to sit down and go, do I want this? Why am I feeling this way about this? And that's why having someone like you come in and help you through that process is so valuable. And also, I would say, having to pay someone to come and help you from a personal, because I've used your services and other professional organizers at different times. And I know that for me, when I put the money on the line and I say, I'm investing in this service, I'm investing in myself, and I'm investing in the quality of my home life, then you show up differently to do the work.
I think another barrier that I talk about that I myself suffer from, and I don't know that I've ever met anybody who hasn't, is I might need it someday. So I call it future fear. The idea that in the future, there might be a scenario in which this thing that I don't use and I don't need today might suddenly be the most important thing at that moment. And the ... after that, and boy, I'm going to be pissed if I let go of that thing that I used to have, and it could have been the perfect thing to solve this moment then. Right? We feel like at the core, it's about letting our future self down. Maybe being embarrassed, maybe being angry with ourselves because we made a decision one day and now we have some regret. I also really work with a lot of people where I'm able to say to them, if that day came along, would you remember that you owned this? And would you know where to find it? I think for a lot of disorganized people, that's a little bit of a reality check saying, no, I probably wouldn't know either of those things. And so I work with people, and in fact, the back of my book has a cheat sheet on a number of questions to ask yourself, which is really around, okay, I might need it someday. Is that really true? Could you do something else if you didn't have it? what's the worst thing that would happen if you let go of this thing? Especially because often I'll find somebody who's holding on to it and they know, I don't need it, I'm not using it, but I can see it has a purpose someday. I think in the chapters I talk about in the back, which are the practical areas like clothes and paperwork and photos, I think paperwork is the area where I might need it someday, comes in the most often, and I talk a lot about that in the book.
Yeah, because there's some practical things like for taxes or insurance purposes or medical records or whatever those things are. And it's very step by step. These are the things that you need and these are the things that you don't need. But I want to go back to what you were just saying about I might need it. And it reminds me of weight loss. You know, people hold on to their clothes, their skinny clothes, because they might fit back into their clothes. And, you know, from my image consulting training and days, your body changes all the time, right? You might lose the weight again, but you might not lose it in the same way. Maybe you're doing weights and you're more toned than you were when you were then. And your body shape is altered slightly, or the style may change. Like flares might come back in, but they might be different than, you know, when you were wearing them originally. So the idea that you might use something for a future purpose, maybe it would come around again, but you might not be the same person when you see that opportunity again.
Yeah, and I think the other side, you do a great job of talking about what happens if I lose weight. The other is, well, what happens if I gain weight, right? And then what if somebody gains weight? And what if I gain weight? I'm going to feel awful if I have to go out and shop for that next size up, especially if I had them here. So sometimes people hold on to things just because it helps anchor them a little bit in, again, those tough acts they would otherwise choose to avoid.
Yeah, and I think, you know, from a branding perspective too, in business consulting, it kind of goes along with that idea that something better might not show up. Like, I'm working with this group of people right now. They're not paying me really what I'm worth. I'm not doing exactly the kind of work, but they're putting bread and butter on my table, as opposed to like, let's make space for the ideal client to come in, for your dream opportunity to come in. If your schedule is tied up, I mean, that's another kind of clutter, right?
Right. And it reminds me of the "But This Is Still Good" chapter, which I call purposeless practicality. It's the idea that, yeah, well, I have this coffee mug. Yeah, but you know what? You don't drink coffee anymore. You actually don't drink hot beverages anymore. Yeah, I know I don't need it, and I know I don't like it, but it's still good. And sometimes it can be hard to let go of something that's in front of you that could have some sort of value, regardless of whether or not you're using it. And I think about that when I think about how I've grown my business. How often did I hold on to a client or a lead that I was pursuing saying, you know what? This isn't the best thing to pursue. It's a little bit of a waste of my time. I don't know that it's going to go anywhere yet, but you know, it's like a bird in the hand. You're like, well, but I have it. And it could be something. And sometimes it can be hard to let go of ideas that aren't serving you, let go of plans that aren't serving you, just because you have so much invested. It's again around sunk cost, which I talk about sunk cost.
So what's
as well.
a tip that you have for someone to overcome that kind of thinking when it's necessary?
Yeah, I think some of it is stepping back and saying, can I measure the value that really can come from it? So am I sure this is going, if it does pay off, how does it pay off in the right way? And what's the probability and the likelihood that I'll get there? And sometimes it also requires, what more is it going to take of me to continue to do this? You know, thinking about ideas, and for your business, it can be easy to say, I've been pursuing this for 6 months. Is pursuing it another 6 months going to turn anywhere? When I'm talking about stuff, there's a little bit of that cost of saying, well, could I be doing something different with this cupboard that I'm storing this bread maker in that is still good, still could make bread? If I ever decide I want to make bread, it'll be here for me. But what else could I do with this space? So it's recognizing the opportunity cost to not using the resource in front of me, that I could use it in a way that serves me so much better, whether that resource in front of me is my space, my money, my time, my energy.
Yeah, and it's funny, as you were talking, I was thinking about energy.
Yeah.
I'm a really big believer in energy and in flow.
Yes.
Like, breath has to flow, energy has to flow, everything has to flow. I mean, the whole idea of feng shui is so that the qi can flow in a smooth way. And I think when you're holding on to things, that's not the energy of flow.
I completely agree. And I think that that's a little bit underneath the book in terms of the barriers that we talk about. In every chapter, it talks about the feeling of overwhelm, the feeling of distraction, the feeling of being trapped, the feeling of not knowing how to move forward. And those are all just hallmarks of energy that is negative, that's pushing against you. And so you can't handle both positive things and negative things at the same time. It's hard to juggle multiple sources of energy at once. And so it's really about saying, when you're pursuing less clutter, less chaos, less stuff, it's also about pursuing more, right? More freedom for thinking, more freedom in your home, more time for yourself. I mean, we all know how much time it takes to clean and dust and clean up after all the clutter and all of that. Think about what you could do if you had another half hour a day that you weren't spending your time cleaning up around the clutter and everything else that's in your home. What could you do with that time and energy otherwise?
Right. And one of the things that you talked about was sort of the deeper story that's going on. And I know one of the things, you came to my house and we were looking at my piano area, and I'm a singer and I have 3 pianists at my well, 3.5 if you considered the clown's piece of repertoire that my husband plays. But we have musicians in our house, and I'm always feeling a little anxious about the music being there. And you and I had a conversation about that, and I remember you said, well, you know, you have storage here. And I was like, and you were like, what's the deeper question? And I was like, well, I don't always know what I want to sing in that moment.
Right.
You know, and so the conversation wasn't about where are we going to put, you know, the Marriage of Figaro versus the Beethoven Sonata. Right. It was, I need to decide what repertoire I'm working on right now.
Yes, it is. So often our stuff is a representation of the confusion that's going on in our minds and our hearts.
Yeah.
And the clutter in your own thoughts. I mean, I think that's a perfect example of, you know, the issue isn't what's all out. The issue is, this looks like the struggle I have inside my head or inside my heart about what I want to be singing right now. I think, and that's a lot of the work I do with my clients. You know, I wrote a blog post at one point in time that I just loved around the difference between tidy and organized. Because we could tidy up your room.
Tidy sounds so uptight.
Well, we could tidy up your room, right? We could have everything look pretty.
Do I have to wear like a maid's apron when we tidy up?
You don't have to, but you're welcome to.
Okay.
I don't judge.
Okay.
But you know, we can make that room feel very tidy, right? Things can have a place, everything looks great. That isn't going to change the emotional connection you have to the stuff in the room. You know, you have me in your space, you're like, oh, this room drives me crazy. I have so much stress about this room. And 99 people out of 100 would walk in this room and say, really? This is lovely. This is a problem for you? Because they don't realize that it's just the physical manifestation of some of the things you're struggling with inside.
Yeah. And what would you say is sort of the root of most people? So you have like one thing?
Yeah. You know, one of the things that I tap into with a lot of people is the idea of the things that we own may often be rooted in one of 2 places, which is not your current life. One is my past, which is, I used to do this, I used to be this person. Or the future that we thought would be our future, I'm going to do this someday, I'm going to be this someday. So you know, everybody's treadmill is, especially the treadmills that are only hanging our clothes, are the vision to, well, I'm going to get in shape. I own that thing because I have this vision and this plan of what I'm going to do. You know, I talk about the smoking cessation gum that end up being expired and you never used it. You're like, well, I was going to lose weight. So you have this vision of the future. The past is around, well, I used to be a pianist. I still keep the piano because I used to be a pianist. I used to have time to bake. So I have all these baking things. I haven't baked anything in a really long time, but that used to be important to me. So I feel like a lot of the work that I do with people is around trying to get in touch with what's going on with your identity and your mindset of who you are today. Celebrate who you are today, and let's understand how items throughout your home are rooted even in the past and might be time to let go, or in the future, which is either recommit to it and make something happen, or let that vision of what you thought your future was going to be let go and make space for more of what is part of your current life. What's important to you today in terms of your time, your money, your energy.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I was just thinking about that. I was doing yoga the other day, and I was, they were doing the twisty pose, and I feel like I'm not great at balancing, and I was like wobbling and blah, 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 but I have a story in my head about how balanced I am and how good I am at, or not at doing these balancing poses. And the teacher, when we switched sides, she said, just nest in. And I said, okay, I'm just going to nest in and just do this. And I don't know, something shifted for me in that moment, and I was just settled in the pose, and I was like, oh my gosh, that story isn't true.
Yes.
The story
right.
I'm telling myself
Yes.
isn't true about I'm bad at balancing,
Yeah.
because I was maybe not so good at it 2 seconds ago, but in this moment, I'm okay at it.
Yes. And I think there's so much of that happens when I'm organizing or when I'm working with people in productivity, because they have, by the time you're ready to raise your hand and say, I'm willing to invest in somebody else to help me, it's because you've already told yourself a story. You've already said, I'm just disorganized. I can't do anything else. I'm helpless. Or when I work with my time management clients, they say, well, I'm just horrible at this. I'm never going to be better. There's so much of work that I need to do with my clients around kind of unwinding some of that self-talk. They don't even realize they're telling themselves a story about themselves anymore. They just think this is true. And so when I work with someone, I will post saying, so tell me about why you think that's true. Share some evidence with me. What's some evidence that you can point to that helps support that story? Most times, I'm able to untangle that for themselves, and they say, oh, maybe that's not so true.
Well, and maybe they just need to learn some skills around either
right.
managing their stuff or managing their thought processes around it.
Exactly. When I tell people that when I find somebody who says that they're disorganized, in my experience, people have challenges with one of three areas: their stuff, their systems, or their habits.
Or their other people that they're living with.
Well, that's related to systems, right? Because if you're in a home, the system either works for everybody or it doesn't, and maybe you need to look at a different system. And so when somebody says to me, I'm really disorganized, I want to work to figure out which one of those three buckets really has the challenge.
Can you say that again?
Yes. So your stuff,
your stuff,
your systems, or your habits.
Okay.
I'll give you the example of laundry, right?
Okay.
So laundry, the stuff is your clothes. Now maybe part of your problem is you have too many clothes, right? There's a possibility that part of your issue with getting laundry done is you just have too much clothes. The system is everything that happens from the time that shirt comes off your body to the time it comes out clean of a drawer or a closet again. Everything that happens in between there is the system. So is it getting in the hamper? Does the hamper get to the laundry room? Do you have a laundry room you like working in, or do you just avoid it? Are your washing machines working? All of those things. And how does the laundry basket get back upstairs? So sometimes we can analyze the system, and I'm really a systems thinker, so I can see a system even when other people don't. So sometimes it's somewhere in there things are broken. And then finally it's the habit, right? Because you could have a $2,000 laundry system and washing machine, but if nobody's doing the laundry, nobody's getting up and actually doing the laundry, it's the habit. And we want to understand what's going on, what's feeding that habit, what's standing in your way. Could we tweak something about the system or the stuff that makes the habit easier? So again, when somebody tells me they're disorganized, I really want to get underneath which of those areas are getting in their way, because I don't want to fix something that isn't broken. You know, I could certainly go to Container Store and buy you a gorgeous hamper, but that doesn't mean you're going to do your laundry. So really trying to make sure I'm spending time listening to when somebody tells me about what is causing them pain in their life, that I find, and I'm able to narrow in saying, let's go back to that thing. You kept telling me how much you hate your basement. If we made your basement better, are you more likely to do laundry? And you can see people say, oh, can we do that? Is that a thing? Suddenly they can start to see things being unlocked about what they could accomplish, what they could change in their own home.
Yeah. So before we finish, I really want to address, most people live with other people.
Yes.
So say I'm really organized, but I may or may not live with people who have different ideas of what organization looks like.
Yes.
So how do you manage that?
Sure. There are probably two tips that I would talk with people about. One is recognizing in yourself what is truly important about it being organized and what isn't. What can you let go? So I'll work with some clients that say, listen, the kitchen needs to stay organized. The living room needs to stay organized. But you know what? Your office that I don't have to see, I'm good with that. My teenage daughter's bedroom, if it's crazy, like I'm just going to let that go. But you might have a rule saying, but if company's coming, that's important to me. If company's coming, that gets cleaned. So some of it is saying, are there zones in your home that are important to stay organized and things that you can let go of? So that's one thing.
And it sounds like also setting expectations around that.
And that's the other part of it, is the communication with others gets to how do you communicate expectations, but more importantly, what's underneath those expectations? What does organized look like and feel like? Because they might, in their mind, think they're doing the right thing, but it's not meeting what your expectation is or what your vision is about what organized looks like. And you may have expectations around a frequency. You know, is it going to be clean every day or just Saturdays? All of that. But so much of that saying, understand why it is important to me that we live like this. Why is it important to me that this home is organized? Because they might not understand how things bother you, because they don't bother them. They don't notice. They're not doing it intentionally.
Right.
And I think that that's one of the biggest gifts to give people when they're in this place is remember, most of the time, somebody is not contributing to your feeling disorganized in the home on purpose. They're not doing it to you.
Right. But how, so now you're getting into kind of relationship coaching, but how do you manage if, what would be the conversation around, you say, Heather, this is really important to me, this is what I would like, and I say, it's really not that important to me, so I shouldn't have to do it, or I do it because it's important to you and I respect you, or so how does that conversation?
So I think you're right, is that it is part of the relationship and saying, this is important to me. I feel disrespected if you're not stepping up in this thing that I said was important to me. I think that you can spend a little bit more time being cognizant and mindful of what's important to me in the same ways that I like to do that for you. And I think it's also important to give that reciprocity back, saying, are there things that I'm doing to you or to your things or your space that I just don't know about that are important to you? And having that two-way conversation. I think when you have kids in the house, there's conversations about privacy, there's conversations about the value of money. There are other things there that are still learning and developmental for them.
Right.
With a spouse, it's really different. Like they probably know the value of money and they probably know the value of your time.
Well, and I also think that this, I don't know if this is something that you cover, but as a family of having values, that this is what our family, let's sit down together and, you know, the family meeting, what do we value as a family?
Yeah.
What do we want our house to look like as a family? Okay, you don't care about that? Okay, well maybe I do, but maybe since it's part of a family, I can, you know, let go in this part if you can meet me halfway over here. But having a family vision for what you want, I think, is my personal way of thinking about it as well.
I think that's important. It's important if you just live with a roommate.
Yes.
To have that conversation.
Yeah.
I think when you're sharing space and stuff, and thusly energy, with somebody else in your home, having conversations about boundaries, about what's important in different space to you, about your time management, all of that, I think is critical to have. But I think it's also important to remember that not everybody if you're organized and you like things being organized, you probably have the skills to be organized. Not everybody else has the skills. So sometimes it's a skills gap. And I've worked with lots of families where the answer is just, you know what, my kid doesn't clean his room. And I'll say, does your kid know how to clean his room? Does he know what that is? And I'll have a conversation saying, what do you think cleaning your room involves? And the parent is just surprised to hear what their son is saying about what a clean room is, because it didn't occur to him that they had no idea what that meant. And you just say, go to your room and clean it, and of course it's not clean.
Right. And also, kids are not adults. I mean, they're not adults in little bodies.
Yeah.
They're kids with developing brains.
Exactly. So you know, when I work with children, I'll say, all right, well, how about, why don't we list in the room the different steps we think will happen in order to get this room clean? Let's talk. I'm a big fan of talking about zones. So let's talk about your bed zone. Let's talk about your floor zone. Let's talk about your desk zone. And how do I break it out? I break it out in like an archaeological dig where we have different zones and saying, what would we need to do here? What would finished look like?
Yeah, and that gives them some autonomy too about it.
Exactly. But I often think, I've had these conversations with adult spouses as well, saying, gee, when you look at this counter, what do you see? And it's a surprise sometimes when people say, I think it looks fine. We can cook. I can make my dinner. I can, you know, I've got all the room I need. And they have no idea that it's driving their spouse insane, that there are 3 piles of things, or that this is a thing that belongs in the garage and it's been there for a week. They have no idea
Yeah,
that it drives someone else crazy.
Sorry, and I think it also goes back to that energy. Like your personal energy may flow in a way that works like that, and someone else's personal energy, and it's how do those combine, and that's why it's nice to have someone like you come in and mediate the energy and give a plan for it. So tell us, how we can find out more about you. And one of the things I think is really interesting is that you go in people's homes and work with them, and you work virtually. So just take 1 minute and talk to us about what that looks like to work virtually.
Several years ago, I had some people who were following me on my blog, which is clevergirlorganizing.com, or on my Facebook page at Clever Girl Organizing. And I would hear all the time, I would love to work with you if only you lived near me. And I only had to hear that a dozen times to say, there's got to be a way to solve this. And so I launched my virtual organizing, and I work with people through Skype or FaceTime, visually one-to-one, which I think always helps because I can see what's going on in their face and they can see what's going on in mine, but I can see their space. And we work on goals that they might have. I'll typically work with somebody like every other week. We talk on the screen for an hour about what are you working on this week? What are your challenges? What are you worried about? How do we brainstorm now what you're going to do about it? How do we get through your goals? And then they get off the screen with me and they spend the next hour doing it. And at the end of the hour, they report back.
Oh, that's cool.
And so it's a way, it's not like, oh, that was great. Like you read a podcast, you're saying like, oh, that's great. I should work on that someday. And you don't think about it again. They're committed to saying, all right, they're going to put into action next. It is great for the person who says, I'm a little DIY. I can handle it. I don't need somebody in the room with me. It's also great for the person who says, I would love to use a professional organizer, but I don't know that I can handle the expense in my budget right now. So it's a little way to do it a little bit on a budget. It's also great for people who say, I really want the help, but I just can't have anybody in my home yet. I just can't. And of course, it's great for my clients who live in different countries and different parts of this country. And to say, I want to work with somebody who I know and I trust, and I follow what she does and I read what she does, and I would love to be able to work with her. Why don't you live in this state?
I love it. I love it. So if somebody does want to find out more about you, where can we find you? What's going on?
Clevergirlorganizing.com is the best place to find most things about me, which includes my hands-on organizing, my virtual organizing, and I do speaking with community groups and corporate groups. So all my speaking events and information is there too. I have
Are you in social media?
I was going to say I have a Clever Girl Organizing is my Facebook page, Clever Girl Organizing is my Instagram, and Clever Girl Org on Twitter. I think that's it.
So you tweet?
I do tweet.
You do tweet?
I do tweet. People ask what my goals are with different social media because I think it's important to have goals when you're in different areas. And what I tell people about Twitter is Twitter has been great for me to connect with other colleagues in my industry. That I don't know that I get customers from Twitter, but I know that I get great resources from other organizers and other productivity consultants from Twitter. So that's been great.
All of the different platforms have different personalities, different functions, and I think they're all getting very incestuous anyway. Now they're crossing over Instagram and Facebook. But anyway, we can find you all things at Clever Girl.
Clever Girl Organizing.
Clever Girl Organizing.
Yes.
So thank you so much for being here, Kathy. I'm so happy to have you here and have you share your expertise with us. And one of the things that I love about what you do is that you do go on that deeper dive, because you can have people come into your house and just, your room is organized and then leave, but a month later you're in exactly the same place. So I really admire and appreciate, as someone who's gone through this process more than once, having that thought process to go back, and you really help people do that, to be able to then do it on their own when they've graduated and maybe they don't need somebody to do it. They can go through that process. So I really appreciate that you have that process as well.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. So one last question.
Yeah?
What does it mean to you to thrive?
When I think about thriving, it's one of those moments where I see my future is just nothing but possibilities. And I felt that way in my business after kind of the end of year 2. I was like, oh my gosh, I can go anywhere from here. Like, this is just, I can choose any path in ways that I never thought were really open to me. So for me, thriving is about seeing the possibilities and not the barriers. It's about this book. It's about seeing the possibilities and not the barriers.
I was just going to say, it's a clutter-free mind. It's a
It
clutter-free vision. It's clutter-free energy. So
it is.
I love that. I love that answer. Well, thank you so much for being here. I loved having you on. And thank you all for joining us as well. And until next time, here's to hitting all your high notes. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.